All right, MTG Arena announcement, January 5th, 2026. So we're going to be starting off with the bad news here. Since this is primarily Timeless and Historic channel, I'm only going to be talking more into these topics. And I'll also talk about some of the exciting cards later. So the bad news is basically the Power Cube. Unlike what we expected for them to do with the Power Cube, which is add more exciting cards to the format, and, give us more cards to Timeless and Historic, but we got none of that. They did update the cube list by adding a bunch of the Universes Beyond cards, and also got rid of some pesky Boros cards as well, since the Boros has been kind of dominating the format. But like I said, there's no new update to the cube price pack, which is essentially what we kind of care about in this channel, since only the cards that get added to the cube price pack are the cards that are actually coming to the Arena Constructed format, which is also basically stated here. Only the cards that get added to the cube price pack gets kind of trickled down into the Timeless and Historic. So unfortunately, we kind of expected things like Urza's Saga, things like that, to come to Timeless and Historic, but we actually got none of that, which is very, very disappointing. Now, this actually might have to do with the fact that in the last ban announcement, they kind of talked about what they want to do with the historic format. In the last ban announcement, it was stated that the power level delta between the most popular decks in the lower ladder and top tier decks is higher than ever before. They are also re-examining the format philosophy and ban list in the coming months. So maybe they don't want to add a bunch of new cards right now and have to think about which cards they need to pre-ban for the historic, and then they have to do it again in the future once they do finish re-examining the format philosophy. So maybe that also has to do with it, but we don't know for sure exactly, because I feel like there's a lot of cards in the cube at the moment that are actually pretty safe additions in my opinion. Like, for example, Urza's Saga here, I think that's a really, really safe addition in Timeless format. Or something like an Archon of Cruelty here, I think that's also a pretty safe addition in my opinion. I even think him to Torok, even though a lot of people hate this card, I think this is a pretty safe addition in my opinion as well. I'm kind of indifferent about it. So there's definitely a lot of cards that are not in Arena that I think that are fairly safe to add, in my opinion. But they chose not to add anything, which is why I think it has to do with potentially historic. Because like I said, they don't want to do the work twice, right? Next up, we got another controversial topic that we're going to be diving into, which is the Lorwyn Eclipsed Mastery Pass. Outside of the fact that it's only going to be 6 weeks long with the 40 levels, which, by the way, there's actually a lot of confusion about that. A lot of people are actually confused about the potential of getting less packs overall per pass, but as you can see here, this is the Lorwyn Mastery Pass detail. You are still getting 20 packs, which is in line with every single Mastery Pass we have received so far. It's just that this Mastery Pass in particular is only going to last 6 weeks with 40 levels, which is quite short. But the confusion here is that because the Mastery Pass's duration is short, people are talking about how you're getting less packs overall per the Mastery Pass. But like I said, it's not exactly true, because they look at this and then they're talking about how they get less packs overall. But you gotta remember that this Mastery Pass is short. So because of that, the free pass, so this is the free pass, we're actually getting less overall rewards, but that doesn't mean we're getting less overall rewards per year, right? There's still the same amount of days per year. That didn't change. So it doesn't really actually matter if there are, let's say, 10 short Mastery Passes per year or 5 long Mastery Passes per year. It doesn't actually change the number of packs you can acquire freely per year. So that's something that people actually missed here, which is leading to this confusion. But so that's not exactly where the controversy is actually coming from, but it's actually because of the fact that they are changing how the pre-order works. So what used to be, so this is the previous pass that we have. You can buy it for $15. So what used to be $15 per pass if you pre-ordered it is now being changed so that the pass bundle will no longer be available to pre-order. So what that means is now the Mastery Pass is going to be exclusive to only being purchasable with gems, which is equivalent to 3,400 gem, and that translates to $20 to buy the pass. So if you were pre-ordering, this does mean that you are paying $5 more per set. So let's delve a little deeper why they are actually making this change. So why remove the pass bundle? Well, simply put, it wasn't doing what we had hoped. It says when you pre-ordered the pass bundle, you'd have the Mastery Pass ready, but there were no tools from the new set to use in advancing. This created an experience that was more frustrating than rewarding. But they actually don't really go over the fact that whether you buy it after the set release or you just buy it through a pre-order, it doesn't change the fact that there's no other tools available in advancing this pass unless you just play. So this doesn't change. So the only thing that's changing is the price, which is something to keep in mind. And here's a comparison here. Lorwyn, you get 20 packs. Avatar said you get 20 packs. The amount of gold and gem actually hasn't changed. 4,000 gold and 1,200 gems. It's the same case for the Avatar set. It seems like it's basically the same from what I can tell. It's just that the only change here is that instead of paying $15 if you're pre-ordering, you're now paying $20. Which is kind of the point here. Yeah, that's all the bad news out of the way. Of course, this isn't exactly a bad news if you're already buying it with gems to begin with. But yeah, there you have it. Okay, so now we got the bad news out of the way. Let's talk about the positives. I want to go over some spoiler cards that are actually exciting to me for the Eternal format. And of course, these cards will come out on January 20th with the Lorwyn set. So I'm actually pretty excited to see what these cards can do. So number one, we have the Painter's Servant. So this is a 2-mana artifact creature with the 1/3 stats. As this card comes into play, you choose a color. And it basically makes all the cards that aren't in play, spells and permanents are of the chosen color. So let's say if you call red, all the cards in the opponent's deck are going to become red. And that is including lands as well, which is normally colorless. And now if you pair it up with the breaking news card that we got called the Grindstone, which is already in Arena. It's a 1-mana artifact that says if you pay 3, target player mills 2 cards, and if those cards share a color, you repeat this process. So because you've named red, since all the cards that opponent has in their deck share a color, the Grindstone just keeps going until opponent has 0 cards left in the deck. So that is the 2-card combo that we have now available in Timeless and Historic, which is pretty cool. But unfortunately, since we didn't get Urza Saga from the Power Cube, as we were expecting for them to add the Arena Eternal format, but because they didn't do that, this 2-card combo basically lost a tutor spell for the Grindstone, which does really suck indeed. Alright, next up we got Devoted Druid. So this is a 2-mana mana dork, which is not very exciting, but this card is usually paired up with another card in a little bit more combo-oriented shell. That basically makes this card give you infinite mana. This card is often paired up with cards that we currently don't have in Arena, which makes this card into an artifact. So because it's no longer a creature, the -1 counter to untap this card has no direct impact on the card itself. So you can keep putting the -1/-1 counter to untap this card, and basically you can generate an infinite mana this way. But like I said, we currently don't have that card available. However, what we do have in Arena format is this card called Rezug, which is actually kind of an obscure card that saw very little play in Keta's deck. And this card can turn a creature card in the graveyard into an artifact. So it's going to lose all the other types this card has once it becomes an artifact, which is kind of perfect here. And that'll allow you to generate infinite mana here. So that's why I kind of think this card does have some potential here. So we'll see about that. So next up, we got Fairy Macabre. So this is a 3-mana 2/2 Fairy Rogue that is flying. Discard this card, exile up to 2 target cards from graveyard. So as you'd expect, this card is a very, very nice cyber card in the older format. And although it's not as exciting because it's a cyber card, but it's an awesome card to have it in Arena. But you might ask, like, why would you want to play this over some other graveyard hates in Historic or Timeless? Well, there's actually few reasons, actually. One, this dodges something like Duress. Duress isn't the most uncommon card out of the sideboard in Game 2 and 3. And 2, it cannot be countered. This is actually a huge one, especially if you consider something like Timeless. If you're playing against something like a Reanimator in Timeless, they might have some counter spells for something like a Surgical. And 3, compared to Surgical, taking away 2 cards is, of course, more flexible than 1 card, which is also really nice. And also, if you compare it to something like an Unlicensed Hearse, of course, the fact that this is a free spell, being able to exile 2 for 0 cost is always better than paying 2 mana. And lastly, it can be played as a creature. So if you've already shut down opponent's graveyard plan, that's the second or third Fairy Macabre, you can just play it as a creature. Honestly, an excellent sideboard card in my opinion. I actually do want more interaction spells, a little bit more so than like the threats itself. I think the threats in Timeless format are pretty good already. I would really love to see like things like Pyroblast, things like that. And next up, we got Mana Morphus. It's a 2-mana instant speed card. At 2 mana in any combination of colors, draw card. Well, here it is. I'm actually pretty excited about this. So like I mentioned last time, the Mono Red Storm I played in Timeless felt like it was missing 1 or 2, potentially, ritual effects to make it a little bit more viable. So we'll definitely have to see whether this card can actually do that. And you might be thinking like, hey, but this is not a ritual effect. Well, if you pair it up with something like a Ruby Medallion, it can become a ritual effect, which is really, really good. And also considering that this also draws as well. And lastly, we got 2 of these cards here together. We have, which doesn't quite belong together in the deck. I put these cards here because, while they won't really impact the format too much or at all, I'm still gonna give it a try. We got Helix Pinnacle, which is an enchantment with a Shroud. Put X tower counters on this enchantment. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 100 or more tower counters on this enchantment, you win the game. This is something that like an Enchantress could play. And Enchantress decks generate a lot of mana. But, of course, the Helix Pinnacle, it does need like 100 counters. So we'll have to see about that. And, of course, we got the Slippery Boggle, which is also another card that I don't really think it's going to make a splash in Timeless, and even in Historic. The Historic aura is already incredibly strong without the green color, but now you got Boggle and Glaive Scout to completely kind of bypass like removal spells altogether in Historic now, so we'll see about these 2 cards. So yeah, that is all for the official spoilers. I'm not going to talk about any of the leaked cards here. Although we didn't get anything from the Power Cube, there's a couple of cards coming to Timeless in the newest set, so pretty excited about that. So we'll see what the Lore Wind has in store for us since spoiler season just begun.